Good morning, everybody. Are you ready for week 4 of our quilt along? Hi, I'm Reva with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and today we're going to be talking about getting your fabric prepared, your quilt top prepared for quilting, and we're going to talk about some of the little differences in quilting as well. So it's going to be lots of fun. I have tons of stuff to show you. So, get comfortable. We'll be here till like 3:30, right? No, I'm kidding. We're going to have a good time. So if you are just joining us for the first time, this is week 4 of our quilt along, and you can go back to our YouTube channel and see the other classes that we've done. We've done one on fabric prep and basic basic piecing. Then we worked with angles and made stars. And then last week we talked about sashings and borders. This week we're doing the quilting, so making the quilt sandwich. And then next week we're doing binding. Isn't it exciting? So lots of fun. We love seeing what you have, even if you're just starting this week, or if you've been following us the whole time. Show us some love and show us your projects at #QSV Quilt Along, and we'd love to see what you've been up to. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Oh, and one more thing. If you enjoy seeing our How Do I every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on Pacific time, then make sure you touch the little subscribe button so that way you know when we're doing all this fun stuff. So just do that and we would love to see you. Okay, so first thing we need to do when you're creating a quilt top, I have the quilt top finished, and the quilt behind us is the one that the pattern that we've done. But the quilt top that we're working on, what you want to do when you have your top finished is measure the width and the height, because you need that information to know how much backing and binding you need. Before we get there, let's take a look at the back side. Let's go up overhead and let me find a spot that I'm pretty sure I've got some. Here's a good one. You might want to go through and trim your little threads off, because if you're using, like I have here, the white background, if you have threads hanging out into that, people call them spider veins. It's not really a fun way to talk about it, but they could shadow through on your final quilt. So if you trim them off, give your project a little haircut, you might be happier with it in the end. Okay, so this quilt is 59 by 73. Okay, so when you're doing quilting, whether it's on a long arm frame or if you're doing it on your own domestic machine, it's good practice to have 5 to 6 inches on all sides extra for your backing and your batting. The reason why is it gives you something to hold on to. So if you're looking at this, we'll go right here again. I'm going to put our camera people through the paces today. So if this is the edge of my quilt, obviously because it ends there, right? If I have my backing and binding, or I'm sorry, my backing and my batting stop right here, what could happen is as you're stitching, it might shrink up a little bit. And if it shrinks up, then it's going to be inside, and that's a problem, right? The other thing is when you're wanting to quilt right here, you've got nothing to hold on to if there's nothing outside the top. Now, if you go back in time to when I started quilting, I always thought, nah, I can do it an inch or two, it's fine. You know what? It's more of a pain in the patootie to try to fudge it than it is to actually give yourself extra fabric. I highly suggest you give yourself the extra fabric because it's just going to be easier. Okay, so that means by adding the extra on there, I want to have 69 by 83 is the size of my batting. Now I'm going to show you a couple of different battings. We're going to talk about batting for a minute. Let me grab these up here, and I have some other samples to show you. Batting comes in all different types. So my personal go-to is Warm and Natural. Did you know that that's made right here in Washington State? Love that. But it's really a nice batting. Let me pull it up here. So it's a really nice batting. It's nice and thin. and it just is, you know, nice and snuggly. So I like warm and natural. I also use warm and white quite a bit because it's white, not natural. Get the name? Warm and natural, warm and white. It kind of gives it away. But those are both cotton battings. And I use the warm and white when I'm using a white background, because if you use warm and natural under a white piecing, it will shadow through and make it look more ivory. So if you really need your colors, that if they have a white background, then use warm and white, okay? Then there's also different types of battings in addition to that. And where did I put them? Let's think. I don't know, I put them somewhere. So, oh, here they are. So battings, you have a lot of different batting choices. So we have the warm and white, I've got warm and natural here. This one, which you can't tell because you can't feel it from where you are, but this is a cotton and polyester blend. So it's a little bit fluffier than a warm and natural. So here's my warm and natural. If you can see how this is fluffier. Oh, he's moving in, moving in, moving in, moving in. Okay, so this is the one that has poly in it, so it's a little bit fluffier than the cotton. Okay, so what that's going to do is it's going to give more puff to your quilting, which is kind of nice. Okay, then you have things like a full polyester, and that's fine. It doesn't really get a memory in it, so sometimes that's good if you're going to be folding it a lot, or maybe you want to do a kid's quilt. Then let me find, is this it? I think that's it right there. This one is bamboo. It's really, really soft. But another one that's really fun is the wool. Now, wool is a batting that, well, it's made of wool, but it has more loft, and it's very, very lightweight in that it's not as heavy as the cotton is because it's not as dense. It has more air, kind of like that polyester looked. It has a little bit more of a puff to it. But the thing that's really nice about wool is, since it's a natural fiber, one, it insulates more because it has the pockets where the air can be held in. So it will keep you nice and toasty warm. It does keep its loft. But did you know that even in the summer, a wool quilt is going to be cooler than a cotton or a polyester quilt? So this is something that's really nice. Another thing is, if you're doing any trapunto or areas that you want extra loft in some areas, you can just put pieces of the wool on top. And a lot of professional quilters will do warm and natural, and then they'll put a whole layer of the wool over top, so that way it can have extra puff. But those are more show quilts. So let's talk about normal humans. That's us. Okay, so let's just move this off to the side. And I'm not saying you cannot do wool, because if you're not a professional, please do whatever you want. But let's talk about our batting. Now, if I'm doing the quilt that we were just talking about, I'm going to go and I'm going to get myself a package of batting, and I am going to use the whole package because it's convenient, it's easy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it. Now, when you press your batting, you want to take your iron. Let me get the steam off of this guy. It's been sitting for a bit, so I had some condensation in my hose there. So when you steam your batting, don't set it down. You just hold it above it, and you can steam it over top, and that helps it stay nice and fluffy. Okay, so that's really cool there. Now we're going to take and we're going to do a secondary project here in a minute. Well, I guess, shall we come back to the batting? Let's come back to the batting, because I didn't finish talking to you about the backing. Let's talk about the backing first. Okay, so our backing, I said we needed 69 by 83. So that's basically 2.5, 2 1/3 yards, something around there, is the length of our quilt. And the width, the 69, that's wider than one width of fabric. okay? Because quilting cotton is 42 to 44 inches, usually more like 42. So it's not going to reach. So what we need to do is seam it. And when you are seaming the back, you can use all 1 yardage. You can also use a strip of color. You can use some of the orphan blocks you have left over, chunks of fabric you have left over from the front, and you can do a really fun little mosaic or quilt, little patched back. Lots of fun. Some people even do a second quilt with the leftovers and put on the back and use that for the back. So whatever makes you happy. Another option is to use something that's called a wide back fabric, and those are 108. Some are wider, but it's all one width. So if you have 108 inches and that's the width of the fabric, then all I have to make sure I do is that I have 69 or 70 inches in length. So you're buying what? 2 yards of fabric? No big deal. That's easy. So that's less fabric. You're going to have a nice amount of leftover. And just so you know, it's very economical to buy wide backs because you get a whole lot of fabric. And then like with this one, you would have a lot to use for other projects. So you have quite a bit. Okay, so what I have though is I have continuous yardage. Okay, so right off the bolt I've got it's the right side, see how here's my fold over here, I got my selvages here, and I've got them folded together. So what I'm going to do is open it up and I'm going to put right sides to right sides along one of the folded edges. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, because this is all one continuous, it's not cut yet, okay? So I'll show you my cheater way. I'm going to get my raw edges together here, the cut edge and the cut edge, match them together, and I'm going to just right now drop the outside of each one. So I've got the right sides together right here along the selvage. Does that make sense? Should I move it over here a little bit more? See what I'm doing now? And so as I go, it's opening up, okay? So on the selvage, let's go overhead here. I have the selvage, and the selvage has those little holes in it, and it's woven really densely right there. So you really do not want to have the selvage in your seams or in your binding, or borders, I should say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and take a really fat stitch right here, and it's not at the edge, and you can kind of see where that color changes. Can you see where that's really white right there, and it gets a little, then it goes back to the normal? I'm going to come back and cut all that off. So I'm going to come in here and give it a very generous seam, maybe around 1 inch, and then we'll go back and we will cut that off later. So let's just stitch this up really quick. It's going to take me a half of a minute or so. Well, it's going to take me more than that because I am stitching, it's about 2 yards of fabric. So I'm finding a spot on my needle plate. There's a line on the needle plate that I'm lining up the edge of my binding, or backing, sorry, and I'm just going to use that as my guide and then just keep my fabric lined up. And we'll just stitch along. Okay, so have you guys been working on your quilts and having great success? I sure hope so. Oh, we got a question? I can't see. Should you have additional backing and batting from the front of the quilt when quilting? Should you have additional backing, fabric, and batting? Yes. So you're going to want to have at least 5 to 6 inches of fabric on all sides of your finished top. So like with this example here, the finished width is 59 inches is the width of the quilt top, the width. So my backing, I need it, and batting, I need it to be a minimum of 69 to 71 inches in width. So you just want to just make sure that you do have that little bit of extra. And then in my length, I want it to be about 89 or something like that in length. I don't remember my notes. 83 inches in length, because it's 73 inches in length is the quilt top. So you do want to do that extra. It's going to aid in having a more comfortable sewing experience when you go to quilting, because it gives you either something to hold on to, and if you're going to have it stitched by a long armor, they're going to need that because they need to pin it and secure it on the frame. So they need that extra space too. So it just gives a much better experience all the way around for that. So good question. Thanks for popping that in. And then now I'm getting down to the end of my piece, and we're going to come back over to the camera over here. Move my batting. We'll come back to that. Okay, so back over here. So I've stitched a really wide seam down here, and this is actually the fold of my fabric right here. Because it's a continuous, what I purchased was a continuous like 5 yards of fabric. And so this is the one of the selvages. So it's coming down, and I folded it and put the raw ends together, so it comes down and it makes a big hamburger fold, right? So remember what I said is I was going to come back through here, and we were going to trim off some of the extra seam allowance, because I don't want the selvage in the finished seam. So you're going to trim that the whole way. And then what I'm going to do, just for make life easy, is because this now needs to open up, is I'm going to come and I'm going to cut this on that fold. If I can get my scissors into it. Nothing's easy when you want it to be. Okay, let me get this nice and flattened out. Okay, so I'm just going to come along here and cut into that fold, and then that's going to cut these into two. Okay, so then you'll be able to open up the whole piece, and you would press your seam. Okay, does that make sense? Then you have one giant piece of backing, and then you're ready to go to town. So with that's way more space than I want to take today. So through the magic of television, we've shrunk our quilt. Yes, we have. We have shrunken it down to one row, which is a table runner. Okay, so that's going to be much easier for us to work with today. And this table runner is, I got to look at my notes, they fell on the floor. I may as well pick them up, it'll be easier. Okay, so this is 51 by 22. So if it's 51 by 22, I need it to be 5 to 6 inches bigger all the way around. So 51, let's multiply that by, or add 12 to that. So that would be 63. And then the 22, so then that's 38, right? Or thereabouts. You're going to make it bigger. Okay? Mathing is not my friend today. Okay, so that's what we're working with. So what I have here for my backing is a piece of the fabric that is full. Width of fabric is okay for the width of our runner, because I needed 38 inches and this is 42, so I'm okay with that. So I just needed the length in yardage, which I have here. And then I'm going to have extra over here that after we're done quilting, I will just cut it off and I'll have more fabric. Okay, so really easy. Let me give you a table runner tip. If this is 42, right, half of it is 21, right? I like to keep my runners generally 15 inches wide so I can use half of it, and then I can use the other half in the project, okay? Or for binding and things like that. So that's just a random little fun thing there. So this is just one piece that I've already pressed. It's ready to go. So now what we want to do is get our batting ready, okay? So I have some pieces. Yes, pieces of batting, because this happens. You get little extra bits and pieces of batting that you need to put together. So what we're going to end up doing is putting these pieces together and then layering them. And you'll see I have warm and natural and warm and white here. normally I wouldn't do that, but I wanted to show you how to put everything together. So, okay, so my warm and white is nice and long, but my warm and natural is a little bit stubby. So we're going to make our warm and natural bigger. So what I have here is the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I have a really straight end on my batting. So let me move my pressing mat here for a moment. And I am going to bring this guy in and I'm going to match them up. And there's a little bit of bowing on one of them, so I'm just going to lay that down very nicely and take my ruler and lay it down on top and get them lined up. See, and so the one is overlapping or underlapping the other, and then just trim them so they are the same. So now here's that little piece there, and here's this little piece there, but now those two pieces will fit right together because I cut them together. Okay? Now, let's bring up the pressing mat really quick, back up again, and we're gonna, well, isn't that handy? I'm dropping everything. Okay, so let's come back here. We got our pressing mat, and I'm gonna lay these together so they're nice and matched up. And usually what I do is I kind of squish them together a little bit just so I make sure that they're kissing into each other. And then we're gonna use the heat press batting together. Yes, all those letters together make the name of this product, and it's really lengthy. It's the heat press batting together is the full name of the product. And when you get it, it has this little plastic wrapping on it. So just get in there, and I thought about taking it off before we were together, but then I thought, you know what? No, because you got to know that it's rows and rows and rows of that wrap. So we'll get rid of that. Now this is a really sheer tricot, and it is fusible. So let me grab my scissors, and I'm just going to cut off a chunk. There we go. And let's just get that positioned over our little fabric. I'm going to do that little scooch again to get those lined up. And then we're going to take our iron, and the bumpy side goes down because the bumpy side is the fusible part. So there we go. It's ready to go. All right, so now I'm going to slide this over, and we can add it to the other piece of our batting. And I can do the same thing we did before, which is to trim that, and then we can put it together. Okay, I think they're taking wagers on whether or not I can do this without dropping the board again. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so I've got that, and I'm going to go ahead and take the ruler, same thing we did before, and just lay it there and trim it flat, and then we will run those two pieces together. Okay, the other thing you'll notice is that I'm doing a really long piece. So when you're doing a long piece, you're just going to do the same thing. So I've done the short pieces to join it together, but then I want to join that to the white piece and get those hooked together, and then you have one piece of batting that is really nice and long and ready to go. So I'm going to show you this one more time. I have them nested together, really easy. You're going to take the heat press batting together, the bumpy side goes down, and just cut yourself a length that matches. Make sure it is nestled together, and just give it a quick press. And actually the Laura Star steams it, and it presses it just right away, and it's really, really quick. Okay, so now we have our binding or our batting all one length, and we would come back and do the same thing and join these together. Then I have my batting is wide enough for my fabric, and it is long enough for my fabric of my quilt top. Okay, so that is done. Ta-da, we're finished. So now let's take a look at the next thing that we're going to do, and that is when you have your batting together. You're making a quilt sandwich is what it's called. So you have your backing, and it's going to be face down on your table. Then you put your batting on top of the wrong side of your backing. Then you put your quilt down on top of it with the right side of the quilt up. It's called a quilt sandwich. So with that, I have just a little sample. Then you're going to want to baste it together. So if this was my quilt top, I have my batting, and then you have your backing underneath. So it's all together. So you can pin baste your layers together, and then I really suggest you use safety pins or pins designed for that, which are usually safety pins, because if you use the big long ones, like say those big long quilting pins with the big yellow ends to them, those are painful when you run into that when you're quilting. I don't suggest. You'll look like you got mauled by your cat. So anyway, don't do that. But there's options. If you don't want to pin baste your fabric, you can do it in a couple of other ways. Now, if you're going to have this loaded on a frame, you don't need to pin baste, because a frame takes the whole sandwich, and you use the sandwich as one, like in the Cutie Breeze. You're going to clip it to that one. You just put your regular machine on, and you can do your quilting right there with your Cutie Breeze, which is really cool. And then it just clips on kind of like a hoop would. And then if you're doing it on a traditional long arm, then you would put it on the leader claws, and it would roll up into your quilt as you go. It rolls the pieces together and keeps them nice and smooth. But if you're doing it, whether it's free motion or ruler work or any of those things on a sit-down quilting machine or on your domestic machine, you really need to get those layers put together. Even if you're doing embroidered quilting, I highly suggest you get your layers together. So either pin and be prepared to remove the pins when you need to, or you can use a spray-based temporary spray adhesive, and that's a wonderful product, but some people like spray basting and some people don't. If you spray baste, they do suggest that you do it outside, because you want more air, so you're not breathing in the particles. But please make sure you take it away from your sewing machine, so the gook doesn't get down into your sewing machine. I don't need spray base for the cutie. Kimberly, you might, because you're taking the whole sandwich over, and you want the whole point of basting, whether it's spray based, pin based, or just basting in general, is you want to make sure that the back is smooth, because you can't see it. The batting is smooth and the top is smooth, and they're in the same spots together. Okay, so with that, it's probably good practice to go ahead and baste in some form. Now, the other thing that you could do for basting, let's do that, are the Sew Tight magnets. So this is pretty cool. So these are magnets, and what they do, these are the HD magnets, so they can actually go through the thick fabrics really well, so the batting, backing, and top. So you just put the magnets on, and that will hold your pieces in place. And Kimberly, if you're using your Cutie, you can get the Sew Tights Magnum, and they're really long, and you can baste bigger spots. And then once you get it clipped onto your frame, then you would take them off. Okay, because you don't want to sew through these, right? But the nice thing about these is that these are obvious. You're going to see them, and you're not going to accidentally stitch through them. So that's the Sew Tights. Excuse me. Another thing you can do, and this is one of my favorite things to do for basting, is to use the Quilter Select Free Fuse. Now this is really awesome stuff. It's a granular, and it's little fusible granulars. And when you're using this product, what you're going to do is lift back, in this case the top, right? You would do it for the back side as well, but you open up the little shaker, and you're going to lightly salt. And I just got to get him up to the top there. Make sure he's coming out. There he goes. Just lightly salt him. You don't want to overdo it. You only need to lightly salt. It's like a low sodium diet for your quilting. Okay, only lightly salt. And then what happens is when you press it now, the granulars are going to melt and fuse to the batting and the top. And what's really awesome is that it doesn't get hard and crusty. It doesn't make it so you can't needle through it, which means it's difficult on the machine, the needle to go through it. It's really nice. You can hand stitch it. Heaven forbid if you wanted to hand stitch your quilt, but it does. See, now it's that where I put it, it's stuck there, so that's ready to go. So you would do that on your whole quilt top, just lightly salt the whole thing, and you're ready to go. There's no weird fumes. It's not sticky and grippy on your fingers, so life is good. Okay, so let's talk about different types of quilting. There is one thing that's really easy to do, and it's called stitch in the ditch. So if you look at this cute little placemat that one of our customers made for our Meals on Wheels program donations, this is really cool because it shows exactly what I'm talking about. Really simple quilting. It's really lovely. But what she did is she went around where the ditch, where the two fabrics meet, that's called the ditch, and she stitched right there. So let me show you the back. So here is that ditch. And when you stitch in the ditch, it does a couple of things. One is it anchors the layers together. It gives some dimension, but it just really gives a nice foundation. Now, when you're stitching in the ditch, I'll turn it around so you're not going crazy thinking she has it upside down. But when you're doing even a large project, it's good practice to stitch in the ditch around the major parts of your quilt because that will help your quilt lay flat. Okay, so let's talk about stitching in the ditch for a minute. So if you're going to stitch in the ditch, we're going to come over here to the machine. I want to show you this foot. This is called the edge joining foot. Okay, and what makes it different is that it has a little blade. Can you see that blade right down the center of the foot? So center needle position. So when I put this on, and don't worry, I'm not going to quilt over her beautiful quilt, but I want to give you guys the idea of how this works, is you set the blade right in the ditch, and then as you sew, you just guide the blade right down that ditch, and you keep a nice straight line, and you stick in the ditch. The other thing to know, and I should have mentioned it before, but look at your batting. Your batting not only will tell you what fibers it has on the package, look at the package, or look at the end of the roll if you're buying it by the yard. It'll tell you the fiber content, but it'll also tell you how many inches apart you need to quilt. So that is a huge consideration. If I have 12-inch blocks and I only want to stitch in the ditch, I should be using a batting that can handle that. Because what would happen, you probably have all had this happen, where you've bought a comforter from whatever store and it has, you know, random quilting or not much quilting, and you wash it and it starts to break apart and you get lumps of batting here and lumps of batting here. That's because that batting needed to be quilted closer together. Some may be as close as 3 inches together. Some you might be able to go 10 inches. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your quilting. And with this little guy, she did a great job because not only did she stitch in the ditch all the way around, but then she added some really nice just straight lines in the block and around the borders. So everything is going to stick together really nicely and can be used and loved a lot. And isn't that the point of a quilt or anything that's quilted? Is because you put your love into it and you want it to be used, and it's absolutely wonderful. So that is stitching in the ditch. Now, let me get this foot off and pop it and put it away so I don't lose it. Do you guys do that? You lose stuff in your sewing room? Okay, so now let's talk about a couple of more types of quilting. So other quilting, and I have this one too. This one I've done stitch in the ditch around all these guys. So let me flip it so you can kind of see that. See how I have there we have the checker. That is from my stitching in the ditch around all my pieces. Now, if you have a block that you want to feature, I'll move this over. Don't worry, Chris, I'm coming. Okay. I have something that I wanted to do here. I wanted to feature the center block really nicely. So I custom quilted this. I did the meandering or the stippling around the edge and right in the middle, and then I did free motion around the shapes. And I did kind of a sketchy free motion there. So I wasn't going for perfection, I was going for kind of an eclectic look. And let's look at the back of that. So custom quilting is putting specific design choices within a specific area. So there's my little free motion, and I have the stippling in that large center block. Okay, so that is custom quilted. The rest of the quilt, I did something that was called edge to edge. So edge to edge is probably the most common type of quilting, and that's where you start at one edge with a pattern and you continue the whole width of the quilt until the next one, and then you line up the next line underneath that. So it's a continuous rows. I guess it actually goes this way. So now that's the one thing that's nice about edge to edge is you really can't tell which way it goes, but you're going to do one row at a time, then you do another row, and you can do this with patterns. You can draw your own pattern edge to edge. You can use templates. If you have an embroidery machine, you can purchase edge to edge designs and use aids like the clear blue tiles to get them lined up. You can use printer placement papers. If you have like some Baby Lock and Brother embroidery machines, they have edge to edge patterns built into them, and the machine actually will tell you what to do, because you just tell the machine how big your project is and it will take care of that for you. Okay, so those are some things there. So let's look at a couple of those things that we can do for quilting. So I am going to use my Quilting Foot. This is a free motion quilting foot that goes for this, is available for this machine, and you can see it has a nice little clear foot so we can see through it, and this little spring that actually will go over the needle bar that will give us the tension we need. Now when you're putting this on your machine, all you need to do is get your little screwdriver, and you're going to loosen up the little screw that is on the ankle of the machine, and you only loosen it enough for this to come off. You don't need to loosen it so the screw comes out, because that's just more of a pain. So I'm going to put that in there so I don't lose it. And then this little guy, can you see how it has that U? That U is going to come up underneath the screw that's still attached. And I'm going to get him up there, and then I'm just going to tighten him right down onto the screw onto the item there. Now, let's talk about quilting. Good practice for quilting. One is you want to bring up your bobbin thread. So I'm going to put the foot down, and I'm going to do needle down, needle up, and give it a little tug, and there is my little bobbin thread right there. Okay, so now I have both of my pieces, and maybe we can go to the back camera. Chris, would that be better? Yeah, I think you can see that better. So I've got those up, and then you just want to make sure that you put your machine into the free motion quilting, however you do it. Some people will need to lower their feed dogs. This machine actually does that all for me. So I'm going to put the needle down so I can grab that thread tail and get it off to the side. Now, when you start stitching, hold on to the two tails, and then when you start stitching, the general rule of thumb is you want to move slower than the machine is stitching. So, and it looks like I need to adjust the foot height a little bit, but that's okay. We'll go with it. Okay, so other things that you can do to make life easier is you can use quilting gloves. Now, the machingers are really awesome. These are really, really comfortable, and they have grip-ems on the fingertips. So when you put these on, you've got the grip, and you can hold on. See, If I do this, look how my fingers slide. If I do this, look, the whole fabric goes because it grips. So that's a good one. I really try to hold on because I'm afraid that, I don't know, I'm afraid that the fabric's going to try to run away from me. I'm not sure. But these are pretty cool. These are from Quilter Select, and they're a quilting glove, but they're not a glove. They slip on like that, and then you just Velcro them around the back, and they're held in place. So then you just rest your palm. You don't have to do the death grip. You just rest your palm, and everything moves really nice. And then your fingers are still free to be able to move and grab the fabric, rethread your machine, anything that you need to do. So these are actually really kind of nice to use. Now, we took a look at that. So what I'm going to do is let me raise my needle up, and I'm going to pull my fabric out because I want to put on a different foot, just because it's the one I want to show you more about here in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. And the other one that I want to show you, you can do free motion with, but it's made to work with rulers, okay? And this foot is the ruler work foot, and you see how it has a really thick collar on it? I'm holding it upside down. It goes on the machine that way. So we're just going to slip this on. Now this one does require me to take that little screw all the way out. And so I'm going to do that, and then it also, before I do that, I should show you right there. Nope, we can go back there. See how it has a long slit right there? That's so you can position it at the right height, which is really, really handy. So let me see if I can find that screw hole. Dun, da, da. Can you ever do these things in public? No, you cannot. Let me see where he is. Oh, if I wasn't even anywhere close. I didn't even have it on there. So let's just do this and get him in there. Come on, Reva. I can do this. Okay. I got distracted for a minute from my task. Sorry. Okay. I cannot for the life of me get it. This is being mean to me. Am I in the right spot? I believe I am. It came out. It's got to go back in, right? That's just the way it is. It's the rule. Okay, so when you are going to be doing this, don't be on camera. Make sure you can actually get, oh, there we go. Make sure you can hold your tongue right. Okay, I'm thinking. I'm getting him. My fingers are too big. It's my problem. Okay, well, hello, Leslie. Leslie's from Milton. Okay, so now when we get this on, what I want to do is position it. So can you see from the back here? We have a little bit of space underneath there. I probably want that to come down because you want it to just be gracing the top of your fabric. So there we go. Okay, so this is nice with that adjustment there, because then depending on the fabric that you're using and the type of batting that you have in play, you can raise that up. If you're doing a lot of piecing like pinwheels and things like that, you have a lot of space to work with. So let's look real quick at just doing general free motion. So I am gonna, let me clip that bobbin thread because I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to show you again. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that needle thread, put my needle down, needle up, and then you can just take this, and I use like dental floss. I just sweep it underneath, and I've got my layers, and then we can start stitching. Now, you don't have to go overly fast. Now, look at that. It's not moving. So I have this too low. So let me put the foot down, foot down, foot down. Okay. I have it too low, so I need to raise it up. That's why you always do a test. Okay, there we go. So now, when you're stitching, you want to make sure that you're just moving at a consistent speed, and you move the machine faster. The machine is stitching faster than your hands are going. So you don't have to go crazy fast. You don't have to go full fast. You can actually set your speed on your machine at more of a medium speed or whatever you want to do there. But here's the trick when you're doing free motion quilting. Have a plan. It's okay to draw it out and then go ahead and just follow that. Work with your needle down. So that way when you stop, the needle stops where you let off, so that way you can just pick right back up and keep going. The other thing that you might want to do is to go ahead and have music playing that has a specific cadence to it. So you're going to have the same beat so you stay consistent. So what I like to do is I put my machine kind of at medium fast, not fast, and then in my head I'm singing row, row, row your boat, and that helps me maintain a smooth cadence that I know that I'm keeping my stitches not so crazy, and then I know that it's okay to stop and plan where you go next. And that's really all there is to quilting, is putting your layers together and then working as you go. And just don't be afraid of the machine, because you don't need to do fast. Do slow at your pace. The other thing is when you get to a point where you have a bunch of fabric, you might find after you've done do your stitch in the ditch throughout your whole quilt, and then you want to go back and you do some fun stuff. Think middle out. Start near the middle of the fabric and move toward an edge. That will help keep from putting a tuck in the fabric underneath in your backing. Also, it helps move out just distributes the fabric out. Okay, so if you have a really wide quilt, start in the middle and work to your right, going this way so the bulk gets less and less and less and less as you sew. Then rotate your quilt the other way so you have the bulk here, and you move it out. So you don't have to worry about going all the way left to right unless you're doing edge to edge. Okay? Just you can start from the middle and work that way and up and down. And then that way, even if you're working with a king size quilt, you only have half of the width at the most ever underneath the machine. And that's where machines with larger necks come in to play. We now have machines that have like 14-inch area from the needle to the inside of the arm, and that's a domestic sewing machine, so that gives you a lot of space there. Then if you go into a long arm, they start at 15 to 16 inches for a long arm machine and go all the way up to 28 inches. Okay, so we have a question. Middle out for the cutie. Kimberly, I love your questions. Depends on what you're working on. So if I am doing a standard pattern, maybe I might start in the middle and work out, but if you do your stitch in the ditch first, then everything is pretty much stabilized. So start with that. So when you're doing your stitch in the ditch, start with the center area, right? And then work out. Other thing too, so if you're using your cutie or other long arm frame that has the robotics, then if you do a good job with your basting, you can then do your edge to edge, and those start in the upper left-hand corners. On the cutie, since you're taking it off and repositioning it, which is so easy, isn't it, Kimberly? I hope you're loving it. But what you can do there is just, again, make sure you stitch in the ditch first to make sure all the layers are where they need to be and they're not going to shift on you. Okay? All right, so any other questions? Oh, Carol, all the way from New Mexico, welcome. I hope you're staying cool. Okay, so with that, I think that covers, oh no, thread, let's talk about thread just for a brief second. You have different threads that you can choose to use. Let's look over here at the overhead camera, and we're going to take a look at my beautiful quilting. So if you're not comfortable doing free motion, there's two things to think about with free motion or quilting in general. One is it will either give texture or it will give pattern. So having this bright turquoise fabric on the thread on the ivory, it becomes a focal point, right? So if you want your quilting to fade more into the background and become texture, match the thread to the fabric, the main part of your fabric. Okay, have it blend in a little bit. Now, blending can do a couple of different things. So let's look at a couple of different threads. So here's a construction thread. So this thread is fairly thick. Not fairly thick, it's like a 40 weight, but it's gonna be kind of, let's go overhead, Chris, and zoom in. So here's this is a regular construction thread. This is the turquoise is a piecing, and it's a 60 weight. So the smaller the number, the thicker the thread. And this may be a little bit hard to see because of how strong this turquoise color is in comparison to that color. But this one is thicker. Now, a lot of quilters, like famous quilters, will use embroidery thread, and that is a good one to use as well. And that is a 40 weight polyester thread. Okay, so this darker blue is called King Tut, and it is 100% cotton, and it is a really pretty variegated color, but as you can see, it's heavier. So if I wanted my fabric to get the texture from my quilting but not see my quilting, I'm going to use a natural, look at that, you can hardly see it. And this is a really soft gray color, but it really blends into the fabric, so then you would see the texture. If you want to see your quilting, you're going to do something like the King Tut, which comes in oodles of really pretty colors, but they are bold and they're really going to show off. So you're going to want to choose how you want your quilt to look. If you're a proficient quilter and you want the quilting to be the star of the show, you're going to use something like King Tut or a decorative quilting thread, and you're going to in a fun color and a contrasting color, and let that show off. If you want it to be the texture and let the piecing show off, use a 60 or even an 80 weight thread in a color that matches, and it will sink into the fibers and you'll see the pattern. And it even gets more beautiful after you launder your quilt. So those are all just some fun things. So that's a lot to do this week. I hope you can get your back prepared, get your batting, make a sandwich, baste it together, stitch in the ditch. And if you're just starting, stitch in the ditch and then maybe add a few more lines, whatever your batting package says to do. And then if you want to tackle free motion, go for it. Your machine may not come with a free motion foot, but it might come with a darning foot. And you can use that. It's not going to be quite the same, but it will work. So just look at those things and have fun. Oh, also, if you're going to use you can also use rulers as a template, and you use that nice thick foot to use that as a training wheel to go around specific shapes. So those are all things you can do. And next week we are going to tackle binding and finish up our project. So I look forward to seeing you then.